Hi, friends. So, today I want to talk about what got us here, what got us into the TMS situation. Okay. And, I'm talking to people that maybe have tried the TMS, the basic foundation, right? And you still have symptoms, okay? And when I first found this mind body work, my symptoms were very severe, but I had had symptoms my whole life, and I had just kind of like lived with it, through supplementation and diet and whatever else. And oftentimes I didn't feel good, right? But I lived with it. And when I found out about the mind body work and my symptoms were so high, I knew I had work to do. I just saw the science of it, and I was like, something caused this in me, right? And I started to see the little behavioral patterns, mostly through my thoughts, but that sense of something not right inside. And by the time my symptoms were high, that sense of something not right inside was pretty high. I had lost any sense of kind of normalcy, right? And and I tried the basic TMS approach for, like I've said, like for 5 or 6 months, and so I gave it a good shot, and it just wasn't working for me. I mean, it felt better to understand what was going on, and not being so debilitated, but I was still on a cane. I was still in a lot of pain. I was still not feeling like myself, right? And I knew that I had to go deeper. I knew I needed to find out, like, what is influencing my brain to perceive danger, right? Because that's exactly what happens. So something is influencing my brain to perceive danger. I want to know what that is and change it. Okay? And so I started to study a little bit more about, neuroscience and the basic understanding of that all these programs from our past, what we've been through and experienced, relationships, illnesses, work, sense of self, they've been compiling up and almost validating to the brain that there's danger somewhere. Okay? And it's this validation that the brain goes, okay, then I'm going to keep the danger message up. And that starts to compile and get higher and higher, and then it gets too high and we get symptoms, right? So for me, I started having to look and do a deeper exploration of myself. And once I started doing that, I started to feel better, right? Because I wasn't coming from a desperate place of like, I've got to get rid of my symptoms, there's something wrong with me, right? I had to come from the foundational knowledge of TMS that there was nothing wrong with me physically. Okay? And using an objective view, and this is important, we want to use something that's not identified with the symptoms or the patterns that we're looking at. And this is what I call self-energy, okay? And it's the term that's used in IFS, and it's also a term that's used in ancient Vedic knowledge, okay? And the self is self-energy, is really who you are. It's what's not affected by any of this, okay? And so it has an intelligence and a guidance that once we align with it, starts to show us what we need to see. Okay? So inside of you is this self-energy that can look at these parts and look at these programs as something that happened to the mind body, right? Because that's where it's stored, but not to you as an awareness. Okay? So it's kind of like a little experimentation of like, okay, what's in here? And looking at things objectively. And I want to talk about this some more because it's a really critical player for our growth, for our evolution, okay? But in the recovery, we want to keep this simple. In the recovery, I started to see these patterns that were influencing my brain to perceive danger, okay? And it felt like a weakness. Like, once I started to really get it and really understand it and really see it, they were like unconscious programs that, and we all have this, that were like, I'm not enough, and there's something wrong with me, and I have this going on, and I have this going on, and these people did this, and these people did this, and all it was danger, 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 danger. Okay? So I saw these. And now, if there was any repression in there, any fear, any lack of insecurity or shame, okay, it was there. It was important that I acknowledge that and allowed that to be felt. But then I took it to the next step. And this next step is what changed things, okay? And a lot of people with very complex symptomologies, lists of symptoms, have recovered using this other basic model. And, it's known in the world as brain retraining. Although I kind of had to find my own way because a lot of the brain retraining out there, it bypasses the repression, and we don't want to do that. I tried to do it the other way and it wasn't working, and that's why I went back and did IFS, and so my journey has been kind of like this didn't work, okay? And that's why I want to do these videos to kind of help you that any kind of repression, we want to deal with that now if it's there, anything that arises in the moment, right? And we want to become a little bit more attentive to it. And not digging, but just attentive. And the way I do this is I sit every morning and I ask myself, what's going on today? Is there any kind of feeling in there, right? Or in the middle of the day. In the beginning of my journey, in the first 5-6 months, I had to do that a lot because of the repression. But once, it only takes a few minutes to do this. You don't have to sit for hours. Feel your feels. Acknowledging and allowing is something that is a simple thing to do. Because the brain's getting the message right away. Oh, look at her, she's acknowledging and allowing this feeling. It must be okay. Okay? So it's a simple application there. And then taking it to the next step is kind of the brain retraining model, which is showing the brain basically how you want to feel, right? What is this mind-body complex capable of feeling? What is it designed to feel? In its original design, it's designed to feel everything, like everything. And this is what, I've mentioned before, calling the bandwidth, right? And so we want to show the brain that it's capable of feeling anything. And let's say we go from a story, an unconscious story of like, this is something that was really helpful for me. Like, I have a dysregulated nervous system. It's a story I see a lot on the TMS forums, by the way. Okay? So this is something you're telling yourself, which is not a message of safety. It's not telling yourself that something's wrong. It might be the truth right now. It might be happening right now. But we have to know that it can change, that everything can change. Okay? And if everything can change, so can the story of a dysregulated nervous system. And this can also be applied to the big stuff, like I've had serious trauma. I've had really bad things happen. And while this might be true, that story can change. Okay? Because we are neuroplastic, we can change any story. We all have pasts that have contributed to these symptoms. And we have to see where we're stuck in our stories, see where we're stuck in the things that we're telling ourselves, and start giving it something different. Okay? Now, if our mind bodies are capable of feeling anything and everything, we want to start wiring inside our brains the experience of what it would feel like to not have a dysregulated nervous system. Okay? Or what it would feel like to not be a victim. Because those are stories, right? Or what it would feel like, right, to not feel so insecure about a certain situation. So this is, if you look at this as kind of like play instead of work, because you'll start noticing how much you feel better when you start giving your brain these experiences. And I'm going to give you a quick little rundown, synopsis on how I do that, okay? And there's other people out there that do the same thing, but just a little different, right? But how I do it is I get into a meditative state and I drop my brainwaves down, okay, to a place where they're suggestible. And this is what hypnotherapy does, right? And I can do this pretty quickly. But all you do is just sort of relax and let go and go in, drop in. And before I do this, I have planned what I'm going to teach my brain, okay? And once I'm in that state of low brain waves in just a matter of moments, I can start bringing in the experience of what it would feel like to be free, what it would feel like to not have a dysregulated nervous system, what I call baseline. I can now tell my brain baseline, and it relaxes down in. And so, because our brains are so suggestible and so neuroplastic, this is something that you get to play with. And the opportunities are endless. And that's why when you watch people that are doing this, go on to Mindful Gardener's YouTube and watch some of his success stories. It is amazing to me. It's so inspiring because here we have this modality, this opportunity to change generations of trauma. Because we're all inheriting generations of danger. Okay? And it's stopping here because we got the symptoms. So this is just, all we're doing is shifting a story. And so we have to be mindful of the story we're telling ourselves, right? And then go in and find a way. And we have to do it again and again because the brain will fire and wire, but unless we repeat it, it will let go. So we have to keep using that experience and let go of the old one. Oh, I've had bad things happen to me, or I have a dysregulated nervous system, blah, 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 right? We have to stop doing that and start creating something that will recreate a message of safety and homeostasis, balance and baseline. Okay? This is a little longer. I know it's a little bit more involved. Feel free, if you have any questions, to put them in the comments. I know it was kind of like a general thing, but I think it's really important because as I'm seeing the stories that I've told myself, I'm like, holy cow, how could I not see that before? How could I not recognize how my thoughts were behaving just because they were perceiving danger? It's all a manifestation of a danger perception. Because we want to get to a place where if a crisis comes, we can adapt, that we don't get symptoms, that we don't get laid up and go into, relapse. But even if we do, it's another opportunity to tell our brain, give our brain new information. Okay, and this is what I call new information. It's just giving our brain new information. And I can do it, and you can do it. And yes, we're a work in progress. And that's kind of the fun of it, right? This is our life. This is like, wow, what is possible here? What can I create? Even us older folks, it almost feels like, to me, like my life is just beginning again. Because I'm not that old self. I'm not that person anymore. Okay? So I hope this was inspiring for you, and I hope this kind of gives you an idea of what really the TMS mind-body work can open up us to. And even though the symptoms brought us here and gave us the big wake up, wake up, wake up, it's a blessing. And I know you hear that sometimes from those of us that are recovering or recovered. It really is a blessing. Okay. All right. Be well. Talk soon. Bye-bye.